The smoke was still rising from the burning city when Admiral Kethval walked onto the bridge of his massive warship. Through the large windows he could see the planet below. Once, this world had been home to 3 million humans. Now it was nothing but ruins and ash. The last human colony had finally fallen. His second-in-command, Commander Velthek, approached with a datapad in his clawed hands. "Admiral, our forces report that all human military bases have been destroyed. Their orbital stations are gone. Their defense fleets are scattered debris floating in space." Kethval nodded slowly. The war had been long and costly, but it was finally over. 12 years of fighting across dozens of star systems. 12 years of watching these stubborn humans refuse to surrender even when they were clearly beaten. But now at last they were finished. "What about survivors?" he asked. "Our ground forces estimate perhaps 50,000 humans remain scattered across all the conquered worlds. They are hiding in ruins, caves, and abandoned settlements. They have no ships, no weapons, no way to fight back. They will starve or freeze within a few months." The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. The human-Zephyrian war was over. The humans had been completely defeated. Their civilization was broken, their military destroyed, their colonies burned. Soon, there would be no trace left that they had ever existed. "Send word to the Empire," Kethval ordered. "Tell them that the human threat has been eliminated. The Outer Rim territories are now safe for colonization." On the surface of the planet far below, Jake Morrison crouched behind a pile of twisted metal that had once been a civilian transport. The air tasted of smoke and death. His uniform was torn and dirty, his face covered with 3 days of stubble. In his hands he held one of the few working rifles left in his unit. Beside him, Amy Rodriguez pressed her back against the wreckage. Blood seeped through the bandage on her shoulder where alien energy fire had burned through her armor. Her dark eyes were hard with anger and pain. "How many are left?" Jake whispered. 12 in our group. Maybe 20 more scattered around the city. That's all I can confirm." Her voice was barely audible. Above them, alien patrol ships hummed through the air, their searchlights cutting through the smoke. Jake closed his eyes. 3 years ago, he had been a lieutenant in the Colonial Defense Force, stationed on the peaceful farming world of Haven. He had never imagined he would end up here, hiding in the ruins of New Denver, watching his species face extinction. The attack had come without warning. The Zephyrians had appeared at the edge of human space with a fleet larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Their ships were bigger, their weapons more powerful, their technology far advanced. The human colonies had fought bravely, but they had been outnumbered and outgunned from the start. World after world had fallen. The colonial militias had done their best, but they were farmers and miners and engineers, not professional soldiers. Their ships were cargo haulers and passenger liners converted for war, not purpose-built warships. They had held out for 12 years through sheer determination and refusal to give up, but it had not been enough. "Sir," whispered Private Bobby Chun, crawling over from his position near the entrance to their hideout. "The aliens are pulling back. Most of their ships are leaving orbit." Jake raised his head carefully and looked up at the sky. The young private was right. The massive alien fleet that had filled the heavens for months was beginning to move away. Only a few patrol ships remained, along with the ground forces that would hunt down the last survivors. "They think we're finished," Amy said bitterly. "They think there's no point in keeping their main fleet here anymore." Jake nodded. From the aliens' point of view, it made sense. Why waste resources guarding a dead world when those ships could be used to conquer new territories? The humans posed no threat anymore. They had no fleet, no orbital defenses, no way to fight back, but as he watched the alien ships disappear into the darkness between stars, Jake felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope exactly, but it was not despair either. It was the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. "We need to get a message out," he said quietly. "To who?" Amy asked. "Everyone's dead, every colony, every outpost, every ship. We're alone." "No," Jake said firmly. We can't be alone. Humanity is bigger than just the colonies. Earth is still out there. The home system has to know what happened here. Amy shook her head. Earth is 50 light years away. Even if we could build a transmitter powerful enough to reach them, it would take 50 years for the message to arrive. By then we'll all be dead. Jake was quiet for a moment. She was right, of course. The colonies had been cut off from Earth for decades. The journey between the home system and the outer rim took years even with the fastest ships. For all practical purposes, they were alone, but something deep inside him refused to accept that. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had spread across the galaxy, building new worlds and new civilizations. They could not simply end here, in the ruins of a burning city hunted by alien patrol ships. We keep fighting, he said finally. We hide, we survive. We make the aliens pay for every day they stay on our worlds. We show them that humanity doesn't give up. Amy looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, though it was a hard and bitter smile. You're crazy, you know that? We're 12 people with broken weapons and no supplies, hiding in a pile of rubble. What can we possibly do against an entire alien empire? We can remind them that we're still here, Jake said. We can make them remember that they haven't won until the last human is dead. In the distance, an alien patrol ship fired its weapons at something. The bright energy beam lit up the ruins for a moment before fading away. Somewhere in the city, another group of survivors had been discovered. The hunt continued. Jake checked his rifle and looked at the faces of the men and women around him. They were tired, hungry, and afraid. But they were still human. They still had the spark that had carried their species from the caves of Earth to the stars. What are your orders, sir? Private Chin asked. Jake thought about that. What orders could he give? What hope could he offer? They were the last remnants of a defeated civilization, hiding in the ruins of their former glory. The aliens had won. The war was over, but as he looked up at the stars, Jake felt something that the aliens had not been able to destroy. It was the human spirit, the refusal to surrender, the determination to keep fighting even when victory was impossible. We survive, he said quietly. We hide, we fight, we make them pay for every inch of our world. And we wait. Wait for what? Amy asked. Jake smiled grimly. For humanity to come home. Above them, the alien ships continued their patrol, confident that the war was over. They had no idea that somewhere in the darkness between stars, something was stirring. Something that would make them regret ever hearing the name of humanity. The war was over, but the real fight was just beginning. The alarm echoed through the massive underground facility hidden deep beneath the surface of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Captain Lisa Carter opened her eyes as the red emergency lights began flashing in her quarters. She had been asleep for only 3 hours, but sleep was a luxury she could rarely afford these days. She pulled on her uniform and stepped into the corridor. All around her, men and women in military clothing were moving with purpose through the metal hallways. This was Blackout Station, the most classified military installation in human space. For 20 years it had been preparing for this exact moment. Lisa made her way to the command center, where hundreds of screens showed data from across the galaxy. The room was filled with the quiet hum of computers and the soft voices of technicians, reporting status updates. At the center of it all stood Admiral Roy Grant, a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes who had spent the last 2 decades planning for humanity's darkest hour. Captain Carter, he said without turning around. Good, you're awake. We just received the final confirmation. The colonies have fallen, all of them. Lisa felt her heart sink. She had known this day would come, but it still hit her like a physical blow. The Outer Rim colonies had been humanity's first attempt to spread beyond the solar system. Millions of people had called those worlds home. Now they were gone. How many survivors? She asked. Unknown. Maybe a few thousand scattered across a dozen worlds. The Zephyrians are hunting them down. Admiral Grant finally turned to face her. The aliens think they've won. They've pulled most of their fleet back to their core worlds. Their occupation forces are minimal, Lisa nodded. This was exactly what they had hoped for, even though the cost had been terrible. Are we ready to proceed? Dr. Helen Foster will brief you on the final preparations. But first, you need to understand something. Grant's voice was cold and hard. What happened to the colonies was necessary. Those people died so that humanity could survive. They were the sacrifice that made victory possible. Lisa said nothing. She had heard this speech before. The colonies had always been expendable in the grand plan. They were the bait that would draw the aliens into overconfidence while Earth prepared its real response. She walked through the station until she reached the laboratory section. Dr. Helen Foster was waiting for her, surrounded by screens showing technical data and star charts. Helen was a small woman with short blonde hair and tired eyes. She had been one of the architects of the Exodus project from the beginning. The sleeper ships are ready, Helen said without any greeting. All 50 vessels have been loaded and their crews are in cryogenic suspension. We can launch within 6 hours. Lisa looked at the screens showing the massive ships hidden in the asteroid fields beyond Pluto. Each one was 10 times larger than any vessel the colonies had possessed. Each one carried 10,000 soldiers who had been specially trained for this mission. The aliens had never seen anything like them. What about the main fleet? Lisa asked. Still under construction in the shipyards around Saturn. We need another 6 months to complete the heavy battleships. But the sleeper ships can begin the operation immediately. Lisa studied the tactical displays. The plan was simple in concept but incredibly complex in execution. The sleeper ships would travel to the former colony worlds using advanced stealth technology. They would liberate the survivors and establish hidden bases. Then, when the main fleet was ready, they would launch the largest military operation in human history. The aliens have no idea what's coming, Helen continued. They think they fought our real military. They don't understand that the colonial defense forces were just farmers and miners with converted cargo ships. They've never seen what Earth's actual military can do. Lisa had been part of that military for 15 years. She had trained with weapons and tactics that the colonies had never possessed. She had studied alien technology and developed strategies specifically designed to counter Zephyrian advantages. She was part of a generation of soldiers who had been preparing for this war their entire adult lives. Show me the target list, she said. Helen brought up a holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of former human colonies. Blue dots showed the positions of Zephyrian forces. Yellow dots indicated strategic targets that needed to be eliminated. We start with the outer worlds, Helen explained. The aliens have left only small garrison forces on most of the captured planets. We can retake them quickly and quietly. By the time the Zephyrians realize what's happening, we'll have established a foothold in their territory. Lisa studied the map. What about the survivors? Can we extract them? That's your job. Each sleeper ship will carry a full Marine battalion plus support staff. You'll need to locate the remaining colonists and get them to safety. Many of them have been hiding for months with no supplies or medical care. The thought of those people, trapped on hostile worlds and hunted by alien forces, made Lisa's chest tighten with anger. She had seen the reports from the colonies before they fell. Entire cities burned, families separated, children orphaned. The Zephyrians had shown no mercy to civilian populations. When do we launch? She asked. Tomorrow at 08. Your ship will be the first to reach the target zone. The USS Liberty will take you to the Kepler system, where we believe several hundred survivors are hiding on Kepler 442b, Lisa nodded. She had studied the files on that world. It had been a mining colony with a population of about 50,000. The aliens had bombed it heavily during their initial assault, but the deep mine shafts had provided shelter for some of the population. What about communications? How do we coordinate with the other ships? Quantum entanglement transmitters. We can maintain instant communication across any distance. The aliens don't have this technology, so they won't be able to intercept our messages. Lisa had heard about the quantum communicators but had never seen one in action. It was one of many technological advantages that Earth had developed in secret while the colonies fought their hopeless war. "There's something else you need to know," Helen said quietly. "The President has authorized the use of any necessary force to complete this mission. The aliens showed no mercy to our civilians. We will show no mercy to theirs," Lisa understood. This would not be a war of conquest or occupation. This would be a war of extinction. Humanity had learned a hard lesson about the nature of the galaxy. There was no room for mercy when dealing with species that would wipe out entire civilizations. She returned to her quarters and began packing her gear. In a few hours, she would be on a ship traveling toward the ruins of human civilization. She would find the survivors and bring them home. She would make the aliens pay for every life they had taken, but first, she had one more duty to perform. She sat at her desk and began writing a message to be sent to Earth's leaders. It would be transmitted after the operation began when there was no way to call it back. "To the people of Earth," she wrote, "by the time you receive this message, the second phase of humanity's war for survival will have begun. The colonies have fallen, but they were not our end. They were our beginning. The aliens think they have defeated us, but they have only awakened something that should have been left sleeping. We go now to reclaim what was taken from us. We go to show the galaxy that humanity bows to no one." She sealed the message and prepared for war. Tomorrow, the aliens would learn that they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought the war was over. They were about to discover that it had barely begun. Jake Morrison was cleaning his rifle when the sky started to change. It was near midnight, and he was sitting in what used to be a school cafeteria, now just broken walls and scattered debris. The other survivors were sleeping on makeshift beds made from old clothes and pieces of metal. They had been hiding in the ruins of New Denver for 3 months now. Moving from building to avoid the alien patrols, Amy Rodriguez was on watch duty. Crouched near a hole in the wall that gave them a view of the street outside, she had been staring at the same empty road for 2 hours when she noticed something strange. The stars were moving. "Jake," she whispered urgently, "get over here, now." Jake set down his rifle and crawled over to her position. He looked up through the hole in the ceiling and felt his heart skip a beat. Dark shapes were moving across the starfield, blotting out the light from distant suns, ships, lots of them. "More aliens," whispered Private Bobby Chun, who had woken up at the sound of their voices. Jake shook his head slowly. The shapes were wrong. The alien ships had a curved, organic look to them, like giant insects made of metal. These ships were different. They had straight lines and sharp angles. They looked familiar. "Those are human ships," Amy breathed. "But that's impossible. All our ships were destroyed." Jake watched as the first ship began to descend toward the planet's surface. It was huge, bigger than any human vessel he had ever seen. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered with what looked like weapon systems. As it got closer, he could see markings on its side. Letters in English, USS Liberty, he read aloud. "That's a human ship, a real human ship." The ship settled onto the landing pad of the old spaceport about a mile away. Its engines glowed bright blue for a moment, then faded to darkness. Jake could hear the hum of its power systems even from this distance. "We need to get closer," he said. "If there are humans on that ship, we need to make contact." Amy grabbed his arm. "What if it's a trap? What if the aliens are using captured human ships?" Jake looked at her seriously. "Then we're dead anyway. At least this way we go down fighting." They woke the other survivors and began moving through the ruins toward the spaceport. They stayed low and moved carefully, using the piles of rubble for cover. The alien patrols had been lighter lately, but they were still out there somewhere. As they got closer to the ship, Jake could see that its cargo bay was opening. A ramp extended to the ground, and figures in military uniforms began walking down. Even in the darkness, he could see that they were human. Real humans, not aliens in disguise. The leader was a woman with short brown hair and the insignia of a captain on her uniform. She was followed by about 30 soldiers, all carrying weapons that Jake had never seen before. They moved with the confidence of professional military personnel, not the desperate scrambling of colonial militia. "Resistance Leader Morrison," the captain called out into the darkness. "We know you're out there. We're here to help." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How did they know his name? He looked at Amy, who nodded grimly. They had no choice now. He stood up from behind the pile of concrete where they had been hiding. "I'm Morrison," he called back. "How do I know you're really human?" The captain smiled. "Because we're here too. Take back what's ours." "My name is Captain Lisa Carter, Earth Colonial Marines. We've come to bring you home." Jake walked slowly toward the ship, his rifle held ready but not aimed. Behind him, the other survivors followed nervously. As he got closer, he could see that Captain Carter's uniform was like nothing he had ever seen. The fabric looked advanced, almost like it was made of metal threads. Her weapon was sleek and deadly-looking. "Earth Colonial Marines," he said. "I've never heard of that unit." "Because we didn't exist when you were fighting the war," Lisa replied. "We were created specifically to fight this enemy. We've been training for 20 years for this moment." Jake stopped walking. 20 years? But the war only started 12 years ago. "The war started when the aliens made contact with your colonies," Lisa said. "But we've been watching them for much longer. We knew this day would come." Amy stepped forward. "Are you saying Earth knew about the aliens before they attacked us?" Lisa nodded. "We detected their expansion into this region of the galaxy decades ago. We knew they were hostile. We knew they would eventually find the colonies." She paused. "We let them attack because we needed to learn about their capabilities. We needed to understand how they fight." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "You let them attack? You let millions of people die just to gather information?" "We let millions die to save billions," Lisa said coldly. "If we had tried to defend the colonies with what we had 20 years ago, we would have lost. Earth would have fallen. Humanity would have been extinct. Instead, we used the time to prepare. To build, to become strong enough to win." The other survivors were gathering around them now, listening to the conversation. Jake could see the hope in their eyes, mixed with confusion and anger. They had been abandoned, left to die, while Earth prepared its real response. "How many survivors are there?" Lisa asked. "Maybe 50,000 across all the colonies," Jake replied. "That's all that's left of 3 million people." Lisa's expression didn't change. "We'll extract as many as we can. But understand this, the real war is just beginning. What you've experienced so far was just the opening move. We're going to hit the aliens so hard they'll wish they had never heard of humanity." She turned to her soldiers. "Spread out and secure the perimeter. I want a full sweep of the city. Find every survivor and get them to the ship. We leave in 6 hours." Jake watched as the Marines moved with practiced efficiency. They carried equipment he had never seen before and moved with a confidence that spoke of intensive training. These were not colonial militia fighting with converted mining equipment. These were professional soldiers prepared for war. "What about the alien garrison?" Amy asked. "There are still about 500 of them in the city." Lisa smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Leave them to us. We have some new weapons we'd like to test." As if on cue, explosions began lighting up the night sky on the other side of the city. The alien base was under attack. Jake could hear the sound of energy weapons firing, but they sounded different from the alien guns he was used to. These were deeper, more powerful. "Lieutenant Don Walsh is handling that," Lisa explained. "He's been looking forward to this for a long time." The attack on the alien base lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the night was quiet again. No more explosions, no more weapons fire, just silence. "That's it?" Jake asked. 500 aliens and you defeated them in 17 minutes? "We didn't defeat them," Lisa corrected. "We eliminated them, there's a difference." Jake felt a chill. At her words, this was not the humanity he remembered. The colonial militias had fought defensively, trying to protect their homes and families. These soldiers were something else entirely. They were hunters. "Get your people ready," Lisa said. We're leaving as soon as the extraction is complete. You're going to see things that will be hard to believe. But remember this, the aliens started this war. They chose to make it a war of extinction. We're just finishing what they began. As the survivors prepared to board the ship, Jake looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens thought they had won. They thought humanity was finished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Kethval was enjoying his morning meal when the first reports started coming in. He was aboard his flagship, the Dominion, orbiting the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire. The war was over, humanity was defeated, and he was looking forward to a peaceful retirement after decades of military service. Commander Velthak rushed onto the bridge, his forearms clutching data tablets and his breathing rapid with panic. "Admiral, we have a problem, a very big problem." Kethval sat down his bowl of fermented grains and looked at his second-in-command with mild annoyance. "What could possibly be so urgent that it requires interrupting my meal?" "Sir, we're receiving reports from 17 different star systems. Human fleets are attacking our garrison forces." "But that's impossible. We destroyed all their ships." The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in confusion. "Human fleets? Are you certain? Perhaps these are just escaped survivors with a few cargo ships." Velthak's skin had turned pale green with fear. "No, sir, these are military vessels. Large ones. They appeared without warning and began systematic attacks on our forces. The garrison at Kepler 442b was completely destroyed in less than 20 minutes. Kethval stood up quickly, his meal forgotten. "Show me the tactical display." The main screen lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red warning icons were flashing across human territory. Each one represented a Zephyrian outpost under attack. As Kethval watched, more red icons appeared. "How many ships are we talking about?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. Our forces are being destroyed too quickly to get accurate counts, but the reports suggest dozens of vessels at each location. Large vessels with weapon systems more powerful than anything we've seen from the humans before." Kethval studied the pattern of attacks. They were coordinated, precise, and overwhelming. This was not the desperate resistance of a defeated species. This was a planned military operation on a massive scale. "Get me a communication channel to the human fleet," he ordered. "I want to speak to their commander." "Sir, we don't know how to contact them. They're using some kind of new technology that we can't intercept." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision that would change everything. "Send a message on all frequencies. Tell them that Admiral Kethval of the Zephyrian Empire wishes to discuss terms." It took 3 hours before they received a response. When it came, it was not what the Admiral expected. The main screen flickered and the image of a human appeared. He was an older man with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He wore a uniform that was different from any military clothing the Zephyrians had seen before. Behind him, Kethval could see what looked like the bridge of a warship with dozens of humans. "Working at control stations?" "Admiral Kethval," the human said in a calm voice. "I am Admiral Roy Grant of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. I believe you wanted to discuss terms." Kethval tried to maintain his composure, but he was deeply disturbed by what he was seeing. The human ship looked more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. The crew moved with professional efficiency, and the technology visible in the background was clearly superior to their own. "Admiral Grant," he said carefully, "I was told that all human military forces had been destroyed. Yet here you are, attacking our territories with what appears to be a substantial fleet." Grant smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "You destroyed our colonial defense forces, Admiral. You never fought our real military. Your real military?" Kethval felt confusion growing in his mind. "What are you talking about?" "The colonies you attacked were farming worlds, mining operations, and research stations. Their defense forces were made up of civilians with converted cargo ships. You never encountered Earth's actual military because we were busy preparing for this moment." The screen changed to show a view of space outside Grant's ship. Kethval felt his blood turn cold. Stretching as far as he could see were human warships, hundreds of them. No, thousands. Each one was larger than the biggest Zephyrian vessel, and their hulls bristled with weapons. "This is impossible," Kethval whispered. "Where did these ships come from?" "We've been building them for 20 years, Grant replied. "Ever since we detected your species expanding into our region of the galaxy. We knew this day would come, so we prepared for it." 20 years? Kethval's mind was reeling. "But you only made contact with us 12 years ago." "We made contact with our colonies." 12 years ago, Grant corrected. "Earth has been watching you for much longer. We studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We used that time to become stronger than you could possibly imagine." Kethval looked at the massive fleet on the screen. Each ship was a work of military engineering that surpassed anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever built. The humans had not just been preparing for war, they had been preparing for total victory. "What do you want?" he asked. "Unconditional surrender," Grant said simply. "Your empire is finished. Your military is about to be destroyed. The only question is whether your species survives what comes next. You can't be serious. The Zephyrian Empire spans 50 star systems. We have billions of citizens, thousands of ships." Had Grant corrected. Past tense. "Captain Sarah Williams. Show him the feeds from the Proxima Centauri system." The screen split to show multiple views of space battles. Kethval watched in horror as Zephyrian fleets were torn apart by human weapons. The aliens' energy shields collapsed under the assault. Their ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. "Your home fleet is being destroyed as we speak," Grant continued. "Admiral Marcus Stone is leading that attack. He's particularly motivated because his daughter was killed in the colony raids." Kethval watched his empire's main battle fleet die. Ship after ship exploded or drifted powerless through space. The humans moved with deadly precision, their weapons cutting through Zephyrian defenses like they were made of paper. "How?" he asked weakly. 20 years of preparation, Grant repeated. "We studied every weapon you used against the colonies. We analyzed every tactic you employed. We built our ships specifically to counter your technology. And then we built them better." The communication channel crackled as another human voice joined the conversation. "Admiral Grant, this is Captain Lisa Carter reporting from the surface operations. All survivor extraction is complete. We've recovered approximately 47,000 colonists from the occupied worlds." "Excellent work, Captain. Begin Phase 2 of the operation." Kethval looked confused. "Phase 2? Grant's expression grew even colder. "The colonies you attacked were not just our people, Admiral. They were our friends, our families, our children. You showed them no mercy. You burned entire cities. You hunted down civilians for sport. That is the nature of war," Kethval said defensively. "No," Grant replied. "That is the nature of genocide. And now you're going to learn what happens when you try to commit genocide against humanity." The screen changed again, showing orbital bombardments of Zephyrian worlds. Human ships were systematically destroying military installations, government buildings, and industrial facilities. But they were not targeting civilian populations. "We're not like you," Grant continued. "We don't murder innocent people. But we will make sure that your empire never again has the capability to threaten any other species." Kethval watched as his civilization was methodically dismantled. The humans were not just winning the war. They were rewriting the balance of power in the galaxy. They were making sure that the Zephyrian Empire would never rise again. "This is your final warning," Grant said. "Order all remaining Zephyrian forces to stand down immediately. Surrender unconditionally, accept the terms we will dictate, or we will finish this war the way you started it." The Admiral looked at the tactical display one more time. Red icons were disappearing across the map as Zephyrian forces were destroyed. His empire was crumbling before his eyes. "I surrender," he said quietly. "The Zephyrian Empire surrenders unconditionally." Grant nodded. "Smart choice. You'll live to see what comes next. Your species will survive, but you'll never again be a threat to anyone." The communication ended, leaving Kethval alone with the wreckage of his empire. He had thought the war was over when the human colonies fell. He had been wrong. The war was just beginning, and humanity had won before the first shot was fired. 6 months after the Zephyrian surrender, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newly built orbital station above New Denver. Through the large windows, he could see construction ships rebuilding the city below. Where once there had been ruins and ash, new buildings were rising from the ground. The city looked different now. The new structures were stronger, built with materials and technology that the original colonists had never possessed. Defense towers stood at key points around the city, their weapon systems capable of destroying any ship that might threaten the planet. New Denver would never be defenseless again. Amy Rodriguez joined him at the window. She wore the uniform of the Reformed Colonial Guard with new insignia that showed her rank as Major. The survivors of the war had been given the choice to return to Earth or stay and rebuild. Most had chosen to stay. These worlds were their home, and they would not abandon them again. "The memorial service is starting in an hour," she said quietly. Jake nodded. Today, they would honor the 3 million people who had died during the Zephyrian occupation. The names of every person killed would be read aloud and carved into a monument made from the metal of destroyed alien ships. It would take 3 days to read all the names. "Any word from Admiral Grant?" Jake asked. "He's still at the peace negotiations. On Earth, the Zephyrian representatives are trying to argue for better terms." Amy's voice carried a note of dark humor. "They don't seem to understand that they're not in a position to negotiate anything." Jake had read the reports from the negotiations. The Zephyrian Empire had been completely dismantled. Their military was destroyed, their government dissolved, their territory divided among the surviving population centers. The aliens would be allowed to keep their homeworld and a few nearby systems, but they would live under human oversight for the next century. "What about Admiral Kethval?" Jake asked. "War Crimes Tribunal. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison along with the other military commanders. The humans they killed may be gone, but justice will be served." Jake thought about that. Justice seemed like a small thing compared to the millions of lives lost, but it was something. The aliens who had ordered the destruction of human colonies would pay for their crimes. Captain Lisa Carter approached them from across the observation deck. She had been promoted to colonel and put in charge of colonial defense operations. Her job was to make sure that what happened to the first colonies never happened again. "The new defense fleet is arriving tomorrow," she announced. 12 heavy cruisers and 40 escort vessels, all equipped with the latest weapons and shielding technology. Jake looked surprised. "That seems like a lot of firepower for a few farming worlds." Lisa's expression was serious. "The Zephyrians weren't the only hostile species in the galaxy. Our deep space scouts have identified at least 6 other civilizations that might pose a threat. We're not going to be caught unprepared again." "6 other species?" Amy asked. "Are they all hostile?" "Unknown. But we're not taking any chances. Earth is building the largest military force in human history. We're going to be ready for anything." Jake wondered what humanity had become during the war. The people who had rescued them were not the same species that had left Earth to build peaceful colonies among the stars. They were harder, colder, more focused on power and control. But perhaps that was what survival required in a dangerous galaxy. Dr. Helen Foster joined their group, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from the research stations. She had been studying captured Zephyrian technology and trying to understand how other alien species might fight. "The deep space exploration program is ahead of schedule," she reported. "We now have scout ships operating in 12 star systems beyond former Zephyrian territory. We're mapping potential threats and looking for other human-compatible worlds." "More colonies?" Jake asked. "Hundreds of them. Earth's population has grown tremendously over the past 20 years. We need new worlds to settle, but this time we'll do it right. Each new colony will have a full military garrison and orbital defenses from the day it's established." Jake looked out at the stars. Humanity was expanding again, but they were expanding. as conquerors rather than explorers. Every new world would be a fortress. Every new settlement would be a military base. The innocent age of human exploration was over. There's something else you should know, Helen continued. Earth's leadership has approved the Titan project. We're going to build a new generation of warships that will make our current fleet look like toys. How big? Lisa asked. Each ship will be the size of a small moon. They'll carry enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The first one should be completed within 5 years. Jake felt a chill at her words. Humanity was preparing for wars that might not even happen. They were building weapons capable of destroying worlds. The species that had once dreamed of peace among the stars was becoming something else entirely. Amy must have seen the concern on his face. It's necessary, she said quietly. We learned our lesson. The galaxy is a dangerous place. If we want to survive, we need to be the most dangerous thing in it. A young officer approached their group and saluted Lisa. Colonel, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Admiral Grant wants to speak with the senior staff. They made their way to the communication center, where a large screen showed Admiral Grant's image. Behind him, Jake could see the impressive bridge of his flagship. The Admiral looked tired but satisfied. The peace negotiations are concluded, Grant announced. The Zephyrian species has accepted all our terms. They will be relocated to their homeworld and 3 nearby systems. They will have no military beyond local police forces. All their advanced technology will be turned over to human scientists. What about reparations? Lisa asked. They will provide labor and resources for the reconstruction of the destroyed colonies. It will take them decades to pay off their debt to humanity. Jake listened to the terms and felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease. The aliens were being treated more fairly than they had treated human civilians, but they were still being reduced to a client species under human control. There's one more thing, Grant continued. The other major powers in the galaxy have been watching our war with great interest. 3 different species have sent diplomatic missions to Earth requesting formal contact. They want to establish relations with us. Peaceful relations? Amy asked. Grant smiled grimly. They're being very polite and respectful. Our victory over the Zephyrians has made quite an impression. No one wants to be our enemy, Jake understood. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage with overwhelming force. Other species would think carefully before challenging them. What about the colonies? Jake asked. What's our status now? You're no longer colonies, Grant replied. Earth's leadership has decided that all human settlements will be considered equal territories of the Human Federation. You'll have full representation in our government and full protection from our military. Jake felt some relief at that news. The Outer Rim worlds would never again be abandoned to face threats alone. As the communication ended, Jake looked around at his friends and colleagues. They had survived the worst that the galaxy could throw at them. They had seen their civilization nearly destroyed and then reborn stronger than ever. The war was over, but the peace would be maintained by strength. Humanity had learned that the universe was full of species that would destroy them without hesitation. They had responded by becoming something that no one would dare to challenge. Jake thought about the memorial service that would begin soon. 3 million names would be read, honoring the dead who had made this victory possible. Their sacrifice had taught humanity a hard lesson about survival among the stars. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humanity was no longer the weak species that could be easily conquered. They had become something new, something powerful, something that would ensure their survival for generations to come. The war was over. The real story of humanity among the stars was just beginning.